a good sign or not, I'm still thinking about last Sunday. Last Sunday was Father's Day. That's something I remember. I wasn't with my boys on Father's Day. They were off with their families doing things, but they did call, and we did celebrate over the phone memories of the past, experiences that we had shared together, good times from their growing up. And I'm also sure that, though we didn't talk about it, they remembered some difficult times when they could have done a bit better and I could have done a bit better. But you know, we always had the relationship of love because they knew that no matter what happened on this particular day, we'd get up in the morning and love one another again. That love was unconditional. They were sure of that. And that held that relationship through all the years. And we continue to enjoy it still today. That's important. I learned that early on when my first son was born, Rick. He was born very, very prematurely. Now, this was 36 years ago. It's hard to remember, you know, it keeps changing. He keeps getting older. I know, but he does. 36 years ago, he was born. He was very premature. Born way too early. He weighed less than 3 pounds, and when he was born, we were warned initially very quickly. There's good likelihood he will not survive. His respiration was very. We were fortunate to be in the only neonatal unit in the South at that time. And having called family and let them know about the palace, I went to the neonatal unit to see him. And I've been warned of that likely he's not going to survive, so don't get too close to him. I've been suggested by a couple of family members. And then I walked in and I was scared to death. And the nurse came over to me and she says, "You can touch him." Well, that was scary. He is tiny. He is so, his skin was so thin I could see the veins underneath the skin. And very carefully I reached out my hand and I touched his hand, and his tiny little fingers wrapped around my finger. With that, I could feel the tears start to run down my cheeks. And I knew I was all in. I couldn't help it. I loved that kid. I loved him completely, no matter what. He was mine. It was my nature to love him. I learned that first moment with him. I say that to you because it's that way with God and us. God does not establish with his people a contract. We're used to contracts in our time. You pay my house and I'll pay you $1,000. That'd be a good deal with that. But if I don't pay the first half up front, then you're not going to paint the house, right? If you don't paint the house, I'm not going to pay you. That's a contract. We're used to it. That's not how God works. He started with Abraham and he says, "I will be your God. You will be my people." We call that a covenant. There's no conditions. It's just the way it is. That was his nature, to love his people. I will be your God. You will be my people. Well, just before we get the Ten Commandments here, he introduces that with a reiteration of what he gave to Moses, what he gave to Abraham. I will be your God, you will be my people. And to Moses he says, "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. I am that one who set you free." And then he begins to show them what that relationship will look like. You know, raising the boys, you tell them over and over again, "I love you." You got to do that. But is that enough? You love them. You show them you love them over and over again. You marinate those kids in love. But you also have to teach them, right? You begin teaching early on. I remember as soon as the kids got up and started toddling around, you began to teach them you don't run into the street, right? You do the first things just to keep them safe. I remember I occasionally would chase after one heading toward the street. Alice did it 10,000 more times than I ever did. But I remember doing that again and again. No, can't go out there, right? Begin to gradually teach them we don't go out in the street. As they got a little older, we began to teach them other things about what it means to be a part of the family unit. You know, we taught them, we don't eat dinner in front of the TV. We eat dinner around the table together as a family. And we treat each other with love and respect. We treat other people that way as well. As the boys got older, when they were going through high school, each in turn became a really fine baseball player. They were one of the stars of the local nine. But they knew, and the rest of the town knew also, that the Nemore boys would be in church on Sunday morning. And they had to go to church before they could go to a baseball practice or a ball game. No use having practice or ball game if you wanted the Nemore boys to be with you, right? Not on Sunday morning. So we began to teach them. It was Dan, my younger one, that talked to me one night over probably an adult beverage. And he was remembering, and he said, you know, when we were young, we thought you were a bit of a hard individual. We thought you were a hard individual because you had these rules, you had these expectations. A lot of our friends didn't have that. You know? They could get away with about whatever they wanted. And we wanted to have that freedom, you know? And then he said, as we got a little bit older, by middle school, I began to see that my friends who were doing whatever they wanted were getting themselves in all kinds of trouble. And I began to see that this lifestyle that you were calling us to was a healthy lifestyle. It was good for you. Didn't always like it, but I knew it was good for you after bed. And then later on, I got to the point where I didn't really think about it anymore. I just tried to do the right thing. I tried to treat people with love and respect, and oftentimes they would treat me in the same way. That's just simply life. You can't. See, that's what God's trying to do with us, with the 10 Commandments. The 10 words, that's the way the Jewish people would speak about it. It was 10 Barim. Can be translated both command or promise, the 10 words that God gives us. He's teaching us what that relationship will look like. You know, we taught the boys what it would look like to be a member of the Nemore family. God is teaching us what it looks like to be a member of His family with the 10 Commandments. He starts out, I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. And remember, just before that, he said, I am the Lord, the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. I am the guy that set you free. Well, if that's true, if this God that speaks to us now is the one who has set us free, why would we choose to follow another God who enslaves us once more? You know, many in America worship all kinds of other gods. And probably the most popular God in America today is the God of the dollar, right? How many people do we know that spend their entire time chasing the dollar? Now, does that worship of the dollar, does that set them free? Or does it enslave them? I think it enslaves them. I really think it does. We see that over and over again in our country these days. The second commandment, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. You know, I grew up understanding that as do not curse using God's name. Do not tell lies in God's name. Now, I swear to God. And then I tell a whopper. Right? That would be taking God's name in vain. But as I've grown older, I think it's maybe more important to deal with what are we supposed to do with regard to God's name. You know, Luther, you remember Luther's small catechism? Some of those of you who were raised in the church went through confirmation. Luther would say, what's the first commandment? And then he would say, what does this mean? Remember that? What does this mean? And he'd give you, we should fear, love, and trust God so that we don't do this, and we do that, right? Well, we don't curse using God's name. We don't use oaths, false oaths in God's name. Well, what should we do? I think we should be more concerned about that second half of that, at least I am, and that is dealing with the question of what does God stand for? What does God want for us? And, you know, I have heard all kinds of craziness in my time as a pastor. I've been a pastor about 40 years, and in that time, in my time, I've seen in some Christian churches across the country very strange things, claiming that God is for it. You know? Remember when shooting of physicians who had done abortions was kind of the rage in some sections, and they said God had instructed them to do this. God was for this murder of this doctor who had done an abortion. I don't believe that that's anything but blasphemy. Here in the last weeks, we have had a group from within the Southern Baptist Church in Kentucky use guns as an evangelism tool. They've had raffles at their church and celebrated the second commandment as God's vision for the people. And to me, when we're seeing time after time people killed with these automatic weapons, it is blasphemy to say God is for having more guns on us. Right? So what is God for? I think that's probably, to me, the most important part of that. And then remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. You know, I remember growing up as a kid thinking, I got to go to church. Okay, well, that's a good thing. But really, that third commandment is more about God intervening graciously into our world. You know, it's hard for us to understand or remember thousands of years later, but before the third commandment came into being, no one had ever thought in their wildest dreams of a day off. Of a day off for the people. It didn't happen. People worked 7 days a week just to survive. Their animals worked 7 days a week or they wouldn't get fed. You know, that's just how it was. And with that commandment, there was a day off. Jesus said, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. It's a gracious gift given to us by our God to pause and to stop. You know, there are farmers near our house where we get produce, and I love getting the fresh produce. And every once in a while I'll drive by on Sunday and I think, I'd like to get strawberries or tomatoes. And they're closed. That's a little inconvenient for me. But I really admire the fact that, and celebrate the fact that they're taking a day off. Right? It's a gift given us by our God. Well, many have said that if we could simply keep the first commandment, I A lot of people said that. I've said that. Problem is, it ain't going to happen because it's not our nature. You know, as human beings, our nature is to do what I feel like doing right now. You know, there's always that little voice in my head that says, you know, I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. The heck with everybody else. I heard it this morning at 5:45 when the alarm went off. That voice came in my head and said, I want to turn over and I want to sleep now, right? I don't want to get up. So I'm asleep. That voice is always a part of who we are. Luther called it the old Adam. That part of us that is always rebelling against God. Yes, if it's up to us, we will fall short of the Ten Commandments. If we are on our own, inevitably we will fall short. But you see, we are not on our own. And that's why we come here on Sunday mornings. We are not on our own because our God comes graciously to us here again and again. We come here this morning knowing that our God will share His word with us and then love us into new life through the sacrament of Holy Communion. As you come to the table this day, you know that Christ awaits you at His table, eager to embrace each one of us, though we are flawed and sinners though we are. Christ says, come to me, child. I know it through and through, and I will understand. Come and let me pick you from death into life. It's that same relationship that I had, at least it's similar to what I had with the boys, knowing that no matter what happened yesterday, today, as we get up in the morning, we'll love one another. Right? That's what Christ does for us. And that's a gift, it's a new beginning, a new opportunity. And then as we go from this place this day, we know that our Christ goes with us out into our world of complications and difficulties, and He will be with us to strengthen us and inspire us, to give us the strength to be loving toward our neighbor, to share with them the good news that we have experienced here.